You know, you act like these things don't happen to girls, and maybe it's a good thing that it happened to you because it makes you stronger and you can walk away feeling stronger about this. And so I was really upset, and I told her, no, this is unfair. No one should ever have to go through this to understand what strength is. Strength can come from many different things, and this is one thing that I wish never happened.
Individuals who are coming with wounds and scars that are internal, that you might not necessarily see a physical manifestation of, it doesn't mean that those pains don't exist. When we have this very simplistic rhetoric and discourse in the Muslim community that equates everything to a test and says that you have to put your trust in God, and we answer the question of why with an actual answer, as opposed to saying, I don't know, we're not answering for the sake of the person always, but to at times justify our passivity.
I was feeling a lot of anger, but I think it was overshadowed by the fact that I felt shame that this had happened.
I felt like if I was silent about it, this was me being able to get over it and eventually overcome it.
You know, you're not supposed to talk about sex or boys or let alone, rape or sexual assault.
It wasn't like somebody ever told me you should be ashamed of something like this. My mom never said that directly to me. But the silence, the implication of that you should keep quiet about it and not say anything, that was definitely there. The idea, and I mean, as I got older, the idea that nobody would want to marry you if they found out was always there.
This is my first, sexual experience. This is not how it was supposed to go. This is not right. This is not Islamic. This is not appropriate. Like, all of these things were going through my head, and I knew that this just wasn't right and this didn't fit, and I didn't know how it was ever going to be accepted by anyone. I didn't know if it was supposed to be accepted. I didn't know what to really do with it. So I just kind of put it away.
The young man who came to see me with his female cousin, who was going to high school in New York City. And in between classes, she was walking in the hallway, and a male student at her high school grabbed her, took her into an empty stairwell, and raped her. She went home and told her parents, who were immigrants. And her parents, thank God, were receptive to the story. They didn't react in a way that said, don't tell anyone, what will people think, you have to kind of keep it to yourself. But they were encouraging of, let's find some kind of help. So their most logical assumption was, let's go to the local mosque and, talk to the imam there. And his response to her was, you deserve it. You go to a school where genders are not separated and you don't wear a headscarf. This is something that is your own fault. What he is saying in this girl's mind is not going to be tied to him, but what she will believe that Islam actually, is telling her. What Islam tells us is that Allah does not take people into account for things that they're coerced into, things that are beyond their ability to control. But the reality is such that the vastness of compassion and mercy that is divine is magnified that much more when we see at times the idiocy and ignorance of God's creation, who are unwilling to really be able to empathize with people in their most staunch moments of need.
After this happened, a lot of things changed in terms of how I looked at God or looked at the purpose of religion or faith and what these things meant in my life. The biggest thing that was going through my head was, if there's God, why did he let something so bad happen to me? And I know it sounds selfish, but that's kind of what was going through my head always at the time, and I kind of just stopped seeing the purpose in praying, 5 times a day. That didn't help prevent this. If I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing in the Quran, why did this kind of thing happen? There's a lot of emphasis in Islam for women to be modest. I always felt like we're supposed to be the clean ones, the pure ones, and something like sexual assault comes and totally ruins that cleanliness. And I remember just feeling, at the sense of it, dirty and not deserving of the title of maybe Muslim or Muslim female.
where we find many Muslims today is not in a place where they're engaging Islam for what it actually is, but they're engaging Islam for what they want it to be. I want to prove this. Here are the solitary verses and narrations in our tradition that prove X, Y, or Z. It's just a stupid pursuit that one would get to a place where they need scripture to prove or disprove the idea that a woman is much more than what one would label her to be, given the experiences that she's had in her life, physical or otherwise, and especially those that she was unjustly drawn into.
I remember having nightmares like every night, probably for about a year or two straight. Every night I had the same nightmare over and over and over again. I knew what it was about, but I didn't know how to, interpret it in any way, or if it was really something to be interpreted, but I kind of just would always wake up scared or screaming and then kind of just go on with the day. And I knew it was going to happen again that same night, and it kind of just became a part of daily life. I definitely took this out on my parents. I pushed my brother away. He was kind of young at the time, but I lashed out at them a lot for no reason. To them, it seemed like no reason at all. I just started, and I was just being an angsty teenager to them. Like, they didn't know what was happening, but I was very angry, very, very isolationist during high school. My mom would always ask me, "What's wrong? Why are you this way?" And I would just, respond with some sarcastic remark or some angry remark.
I was a good student, I didn't cause much trouble, so everything from the outside appeared to be that I was a perfectly normal kid. But on the inside, I always felt very different. I started noticing this huge divide between this part of me that wanted to grow up and be an adult and who felt ready to be an adult. There was this part of me that still was that little girl, that 8-year-old girl, completely confused, not understanding what happened or why it happened. Because of what that guidance counselor said to me, just get on, move on with it, get over it, I basically tried to suppress that girl. Her pain, I would always feel it, but I would always tell myself, just get over it, just get over it.
Being abused as a child and being assaulted takes away so much of your power and so much of yourself that you don't really know who you are anymore, at least for me. Since the moment I realized what it meant to be molested, I stopped feeling.
I did have friends, but there was always that point at which we came up against a wall where I couldn't go any further, and then we would eventually start growing apart.
And I sort of systematically started cutting myself off from a lot of my friends, and if some guy asked me out in high school or said I was pretty or something, I would just immediately shut down. I used to be super outgoing and friendly, and that kind of all sort of got suppressed, and I sort of retreated back into myself.
I didn't realize that subconsciously I felt as though because he did this to me, that I must be a bad person. That because when you're a child, you tend to associate punishment with having done something bad. I became very obsessed with stories of conflict and war because that was my way of telling myself I should just get over what happened to me because there's so much worse going on in the world. All that obsession fed my depression in a lot of ways.